Everybody thought that was outrageous. And, I don't know whether it was smart or not, but
his
I
people
think
loved
probably,
it. His people loved it. And it was a
yeah.
distraction. Look, you can see him at a debate with Joe Biden, even while he, Trump himself, slurs his words and says things that make no sense. You can see him at the same time in the same evening attack the mental acuity of Joe Biden. He has no shame on that. And his people, it seems sometimes, they buy it. The utter projection of every flaw, they seem to buy. Let me ask you this question. So we're left with basically Sanders and Biden on the Democratic side, but putting them aside for a moment, what if any other campaign on the Democratic side were you impressed by and you thought showed something special and that you think means that they will be a force in the future in the Democratic Party?
Actually, a lot of them, Preet. I mean, so Pete Buttigieg, who went from nowhere, didn't even make it to the finish line in a DNC chairs race and ends up, winning Iowa, almost winning New Hampshire, and inspiring so many people, number one. Andrew Yang, so he didn't produce a lot of votes, but built a really great organization, and I think was the only candidate really talking about the things this country is going to be facing in 10 or 20 years. I have been disappointed about the debates. They've been very here and now. I think Andrew Yang's talking about how do we prepare for some things that are likely to happen. I thought Elizabeth Warren was just probably the most consistent performer in every event, interviews, town halls, debates, and I was really impressed by that, and I know she built a great organization. So, and, Amy Klobuchar showed such enormous, grit to produce that finish in New Hampshire. So, what's interesting, probably the least impressive just from like a campaign standpoint, you'd say is Biden. But on the other hand, this is about getting votes. I would say this before, this primary and others. People ask me, like, what do you think? I'm like, I may have my opinions, but ultimately spin, polls, number of Twitter followers, number of contributions, all that matters is votes. And Biden's shown the ability to bring about votes. And, Bernie's obviously got an enviable base. He hasn't been able to grow. But I think we had a lot of talent in this field. I think we got a lot of talent potentially as part of the vice presidential selection. And we saw in 2018 all those remarkable people who won. And I think the lesson there should be Mayor Pete again showed us, Barack Obama showed us. People always talk about what's the right time to run for president. I think very few people ever run too early. You run too late. Like, what if Barack Obama had listened to most people and didn't run in 08 and ran in 16? He would be into his third term as a U.S. senator. And all those barnacles of Washington would be
a lot of bad
sitting
votes.
in. So, right. Mayor Pete showed, who knows? Maybe Mayor Pete will be president, but he ran at the right time. That generational contrast really worked for him.
How is this ideological debate going to work out in the Democratic Party? Between, say, on one side, to oversimplify it for a moment, the progressives, Warren, Sanders, some others, versus the moderates that are roaring back after Super Tuesday in support of Biden. In the longer term, 4-8 years from now, what's the Democratic Party going to look like? What's the soul of the party?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. I mean, we say moderates. I mean, think about just how much the party has moved just in the last 8 years in a much more progressive direction. So, we have, I think, extremely liberal, very liberal, mostly liberal. There's a few moderates and conservatives. So I think that's important to understand. But I think for this election, hopefully, we will, most of us anyway, believe that getting Trump out is such a contribution to global history in this country that we'll unify to do that. I do think that this is a fascinating question, and I think we'll see it play out in primaries in 2022 and 2024. You'll see it play out in Washington. And, I'm getting way over my skis here because I am not a political scientist by training, just play one on TV. You see in both the Republican and Democratic Party, at what point does the two-party system not suit people? Will all these varied ideologies work in two parties, right? Are we going to head to a place where we have multiple parties, which is more similar to, other Western democracies? So that is interesting to me because I think the tension is real. And, there was a while there where the Democratic primary electorate was very much connected to moderate voters in general elections, right? And that's why the Republicans were paying a price. To win their nominations, whether that's Senate or president, you had to go so far to the right that when you scrambled back, you had positions that the middle of the electorate was really repulsed by. And I think you've seen a similar move in the Democratic Party, a lot of energy there. So I think it's going to be one of the more interesting stories in our country over the next 10 years, not just in the Democratic Party, Republican Party. So I think there'll be a piece of some sort for this election. But even in 22, you see a lot of folks who might win House races this time, or some of those remarkable Democrats, a lot of women who won in 18 or are more moderate. Are they going to get primaries? And how does that affect not just our politics, but how those candidates react and behave in office? So I think that this is really an important question. And, my view, again, it's an amateur's take on this, but I'm not sure the two-party system is sustainable for like another generation.
David Plouffe, thank you for your time. Congratulations on the book. You should all pick it up. It's a citizen's guide to beating Donald Trump. Thanks again.
Preet, real privilege and honor to be with you.
Thank you, sir. The conversation continues for members of the Cafe Insider community. To hear the Stay Tuned bonus with David Plouffe and get the exclusive weekly Cafe Insider podcast and other exclusive content, head to cafe.com/insider. Right now, you can try a Cafe Insider membership free for 2 weeks at cafe.com/insider. Well, that's it for this episode of Stay Tuned. Thanks again to my guest, David Plouffe. If you like what we do, rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Every positive review helps new listeners find the show. Send me your questions about news, politics, and justice. Tweet them to me at Preet Bharara with the hashtag AskPreet. Or you can call and leave me a message at 669-247-7338. That's 669-24-PREET. Or you can send an email to staytuned@cafe.com. Stay Tuned is presented by Cafe. The executive producer is Tamara Sepper. The senior audio producer is David Tatasciore. And the Cafe team is Julia Doyle, Matthew Billy, David Kurlander, Calvin Lord, Sam Ozer-Staten, and Jeff Eisenman. Our music is by Andrew Dost. I'm Preet Bharara. Stay tuned.